So we are looking at the mind map with Boolean search operators. This is a quick introduction really, and there is also another mind map that I will show you with more detailed examples. But for now, let me just walk you through the few operators, the ways how you can create more complex queries, and also what common mistakes to avoid. So first, there are only 3 operators. So it's not rocket science really. There are 3 operators and or not. So you can create, for example, a query such as backend and JavaScript. So you can go to LinkedIn. I'll show you in one of those following videos how to use it in the free version of LinkedIn or LinkedIn Recruiter, or even in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. The same approach works. So the Boolean search has been here for ages, right? We are not really discovering anything new here. It's just I want to show you how to use it if you haven't ever used it before. But especially in the following videos, I'll show you how you can compose different Boolean strings and come up with something that will show you results of good candidates, for example, for backend React developers or for product data engineers, etc. So the AND operator is clear, backend and JavaScript when you want to see both at the same time, or for example React or React.js. Developers quite often write React without JS suffix, or they use React.js as it is supposed to be. Or they can write, for example, what they could write. They could write, sometimes they write just JS. So you can, it stands for JavaScript. So you can have the Boolean, for example, JS or JavaScript when you're looking for a JavaScript developer. Okay, so this is just one way. I'll walk you through different examples. I should change the font here. So let me do it really quick so it looks nice. And not means you want to exclude something. So in this case, you want to exclude leads. So in the title, you may look for PHP, so PHP developers, people who have the keyword PHP in their title, but not leads. So for example, you want to exclude PHP leads or lead PHP developers. You want to also exclude managers. So PHP, not lead, not manager. That would exclude people who are not managers and who are not leads as well. So you would only get engineers. Another alternative would be just to type PHP and developer, or PHP and engineer, PHP and software. But you can also do it the other way. When you want to use some exact query, you can use quotes. As an example, when you're looking for someone who has been working in financial services, then I would use quotes, financial services. Just because when you don't use quotes, well, I'll show you, it's one of the common mistakes. If you don't use quotes, then LinkedIn interprets it as 2 different words that can appear anywhere on the profile. So essentially, someone who can have the keyword financial somewhere in one sentence and services in the other. So let me just try to make it up. Some profile. I worked in the financial industry where I was supporting payment services, right? So that could still be a valid profile, without the exact match. But you may also find some completely unrelated profiles who would have, for example, I studied on Udemy financial cash flow monitoring, and I'm keen to explore industrial services, right? So you don't want to just have 2 completely unrelated or related words but appear in different places on the profile. And in that case, it's better to use these quotes. So it would be probably better if I showed you on some real example, and that's what I will do in the next videos. Complex queries are better with parentheses. So when you want to combine, for example, JavaScript or TypeScript, in this case, you may look for developers who can use both JavaScript or TypeScript or any of them. You don't really mind. So you type JavaScript or TypeScript and backend. So essentially you are looking for backend developers who used either JavaScript or TypeScript. So at first the Boolean part inside those parentheses will be evaluated, and then it merges with the part that is outside. Okay, two common mistakes. Lowercase operators, so backend or frontend, would not work. It may work in some systems, it may work in your applicant tracking system or wherever, but it will not work on LinkedIn. And I've seen my colleagues, despite I always use, in lots of examples, I always use uppercase, but some of my colleagues typed lowercase. And when I look at it, I'm like, guys, this will not work. So just be careful, use uppercase always. Missing quotes also, I mean, there is nothing wrong about writing financial services without quotes if that's what you intend, but I've seen it with my colleagues when they didn't intend it this way. So, just be careful, and when you see a phrase that should appear, then always add quotes, because you may see an example such as say backend and financial services, or say backend or financial services, and then what would really happen? It's really hard to say. I mean, we may assume, but we are not 100% sure how would LinkedIn interpret this, because essentially LinkedIn would type or would automatically assign the keyword and between these two words, because that's what LinkedIn does by default if you don't put any Boolean operator. So you would have financial and services, so backend or financial and services. But then how would LinkedIn interpret it? Would it interpret as backend or financial and services? So in that case, you may see results with people who are either backend services or financial services, and that's not what you want, right? Or LinkedIn may interpret it as backend or financial and services. So at first it prioritizes this part, so financial and services or backend. So in any case, you may get people who you just didn't want to have in the search result, and that's why it would be best to have backend or financial services. Okay, but most likely in a real world scenario, you would type backend and financial services, okay, with quotes. And so you are looking for backend developers, backend engineers who have experience in financial services. Okay, so it's quite a common mistake. My colleagues also often forget it, so don't stress too much about it. But try to just remember, when you see a phrase, then always put the quotes there. And a really quick insight about some insights from LinkedIn. So LinkedIn also recommends not to use plus and minus, because those are not officially supported by LinkedIn. Like, they work, but at some point LinkedIn may decide to just disable this functionality. So it's better if you use and or not instead of plus and minus. Plus and minus may work in other applicant tracking systems, in other CRM systems or wherever. So that's okay, but on LinkedIn, try to use and or not. And don't also they recommend to use uppercase. So when using not and or operators, you must type them in uppercase letters. And LinkedIn doesn't support wildcard searches. In other search engines, it works. In your applicant tracking system, it may work, but LinkedIn does not support it. So focus on and or not. You can come up with really advanced search filters, and I will show you in the next videos how can you do it actually practically. So for now, make sure that you understand and or not, quotes, parentheses, and you are good to go.